Vintage touches in modern minimalist living room decor. In the world of interior design, the minimalist aesthetic has carved out a significant niche, characterized by simplicity, clean lines, and a focus on functionality. However, the starkness of modern minimalism can sometimes feel cold or impersonal. This is where vintage touches come into play, offering a perfect blend of warmth, character, and history to balance the sleekness of modern design. Here's how to incorporate vintage elements into your minimalist living room decor seamlessly. 1. Statement furniture pieces. One of the most effective ways to introduce vintage charm into a minimalist living room is through statement furniture. Think of a mid-century modern armchair, a retro coffee table, or an antique wooden sideboard. These pieces often feature elegant designs and rich materials that add depth and personality to a minimalist space. Opt for furniture with clean lines and simple silhouettes to ensure they complement, rather than clash with, the overall minimalist theme. 2. Vintage textiles and patterns. Vintage textiles can bring a soft, inviting touch to a minimalist living room. Consider incorporating items like a hand-woven Persian rug, vintage throw pillows, or an antique quilt draped over a modern sofa. These textiles often come with unique patterns and textures that add visual interest and a sense of coziness. Be mindful to select pieces in a muted color palette that harmonizes with the room's overall scheme to maintain the minimalist aesthetic. 3. Artwork and decorative items. Incorporating vintage artwork and decorative items is another way to infuse character into a minimalist living room. Vintage posters, black and white photographs, or classic oil paintings can serve as focal points on otherwise bare walls. Additionally, decorative items such as antique vases, old books, or vintage lamps can add a nostalgic charm. These pieces should be used sparingly to avoid clutter, staying true to minimalist principles. 4. Mixed materials. A minimalist living room can benefit from the introduction of varied materials that are often found in vintage items. Incorporate materials like aged leather, distressed wood, or patinated metal. For instance, a minimalist space with a modern sofa can be enhanced with a vintage leather armchair or a reclaimed wood coffee table. The mix of materials brings warmth and texture, breaking the monotony of a single material dominance. 5. Color palette. While minimalist decor typically relies on a neutral color palette, adding vintage touches can introduce subtle, rich colors without overwhelming the space. Earthy tones, muted greens, and soft pastels often found in vintage pieces can add warmth and create a more inviting atmosphere. These colors can be introduced through vintage accessories, upholstery, or even a single accent wall. 6. Functional accessories. In a minimalist living room, every item should have a purpose. Vintage pieces that serve a functional role can be both practical and decorative. For example, an antique trunk can double as a coffee table and storage unit, or a vintage ladder can be repurposed as a stylish bookshelf. These functional vintage items can help maintain the minimalist ethos of form following function while adding a unique charm to the space. 7. Lighting. Vintage lighting fixtures can serve as striking focal points in a minimalist living room. Chandeliers, pendant lights, or floor lamps with a vintage design can add elegance and character. Consider fixtures made from brass, bronze, or glass to introduce a touch of old-world charm. The soft, warm glow from vintage lighting can also enhance the cozy atmosphere of the room. Conclusion. Incorporating vintage touches into a modern minimalist living room decor is about finding the perfect balance between old and new, warmth and simplicity, character and functionality. By thoughtfully selecting vintage furniture, textiles, artwork, and accessories, you can create a living space that is not only aesthetically pleasing but also rich in history and personality. This blend of styles can transform a minimalist living room into a truly unique and inviting retreat. Creating a comfortable, minimalist, vintage-style living room involves blending the clean lines and simplicity of minimalism with the warmth, charm, and character of vintage elements. Here's a guide on how to achieve this look. 1. Start with a neutral base. Color palette. Begin with a neutral color palette as the foundation. Shades of white, beige, gray, and soft pastels work well to create a minimalist backdrop. These colors provide a calming effect and allow vintage elements to stand out. Walls and floors. Keep walls and floors simple and neutral. Consider white walls and wooden or light-colored flooring. If you prefer rugs, opt for ones with subtle patterns and colors that complement the vintage theme. 2. Choose key vintage furniture pieces. Statement pieces. Incorporate a few key vintage furniture pieces, such as a mid-century modern sofa, a vintage armchair, or an antique coffee table. These pieces should be functional and have clean lines to maintain the minimalist aesthetic. Mix and match. Combine modern and vintage furniture to create a balanced look. For instance, pair a sleek modern sofa with a vintage wooden sideboard or a retro coffee table. 3. Incorporate vintage textiles. Rugs. Add a vintage rug with a classic pattern to anchor the room and add warmth. Persian or Oriental rugs work well in minimalist spaces. Throws and pillows. Use vintage throws and pillows to add texture and comfort. Choose textiles in muted colors and simple patterns to avoid overwhelming the space. 4. Add vintage accessories. Decorative items. Introduce vintage accessories like antique vases, old books, and vintage clocks. These items add character without cluttering the space. Artwork. Hang vintage artwork, such as black and white photographs, retro posters, or classic oil paintings. Keep the frames simple and cohesive with the overall color scheme. 5. Use mixed materials. Wood and metal. Incorporate furniture and accessories made from aged wood, distressed metal, and other natural materials. These elements add warmth and texture to the minimalist setting. Leather and fabric. Consider vintage leather chairs or fabric-covered ottomans. The mix of materials brings a cozy and inviting feel to the room. 6. Focus on functional decor. Multifunctional furniture. Opt for vintage furniture that serves multiple purposes, such as an antique trunk that doubles as a coffee table and storage, or a vintage ladder used as a bookshelf. Minimal clutter. Keep decor minimal and purposeful. Choose pieces that are both decorative and functional to maintain the minimalist look. 7. Enhance with vintage lighting. Lighting fixtures. Use vintage lighting fixtures like chandeliers, pendant lights, or floor lamps to add charm and character. Brass, bronze, and glass fixtures can bring a touch of old-world elegance. Warm lighting. Choose warm-toned bulbs to create a cozy and inviting atmosphere. Soft lighting can make the room feel more comfortable and welcoming. 8. Add personal touches. Personal collections. Display personal collections, such as vintage cameras, records, or travel souvenirs. These items add a unique and personal touch to the decor. Plants. Introduce indoor plants to bring life and freshness to the space. Choose simple, elegant planters that complement the vintage style.
Thanks for watching. Drop a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to watch more videos like this.